gender reveal parties, psycho clowns in Stephen King novels, and now, foreign espionage. We Americans are suckers for a good balloon story, so let's pop the latest news that bad faith Republicans are desperate to weaponize. Alright folks, as you are undoubtedly aware, there's been one major political story which has entranced virtually every American for the past few days. And that story is about, of all things, a freaking balloon. Not an errant gender reveal balloon, but nothing less than a Chinese spy balloon, okay? It was reported to the American public on Thursday, it was shot down finally on Saturday, and we're talking about it now on this channel. And you might be wondering, what took you so long? But I've got a personal, informal policy that when it comes to certain types of stories, like about espionage or mass violence or a shooting, where the facts are quite possibly ambiguous and we haven't ascertained all the relevant information, I try not to give a hot take because I think it's really irresponsible to offer political commentary on a particular story which has some degree of inherent ambiguity, and you offer a hot take, you offer a firm opinion, additional facts become available, makes you look like an ass, and then you got to retract everything. So I tend to wait, okay? As tempting as it is for the clicks and everything to just jump on it, I wanted to make sure that additional facts became available before I offered commentary. And additional facts have become available. We shot the thing down. The story is not technically over, but we've hit the climax, and now is the falling action if you're a film geek, okay? So let's dive into this because there's quite a bit to cover. Axios has this handy primer, everything we know about the China balloon. We're going to scroll all the way down and start at the beginning. So again, the Pentagon announced this to the public on Thursday. They accused China on Thursday of using the balloon to collect information about sensitive military sites when it was spotted. I think it was in Montana and Idaho, so the upper northwest of the United States. When it made the announcement, the Pentagon pointed out, look, the balloon does not pose a military or physical threat to people on the ground. And as long as it was in the air, it didn't even pose a threat to civilian air traffic because the balloon was at 60,000 feet, which is a lot higher than planes go, for civilian planes. So as long as it stayed in the air, it wasn't a threat to people on the ground or other people in the air. Because a lot of people were like, well, why don't you just shoot it down? If you're pretty sure it's a spy balloon, you know where it is, just blow it up. And the Pentagon said, look, the size of the balloon is pretty damn big, and if we shoot it down, there's going to be a debris field, which will cause tremendous damage, potentially, to anybody on the ground, civilian property or civilians themselves. So President Biden gave the order to the Pentagon, like, look, shoot it down, but only do it when you're pretty sure you can do it safely. So he's like, look, the Pentagon's like, look, we know where it is. It started in the, upper northwest. It was moving eastward. It was being tracked by the North American Aerospace Defense Command. And as soon as we get the opportunity to safely shoot it down, we're going to do it. And they did. It happened on Saturday because the balloon finally made it out over the Atlantic Ocean off the coast of South Carolina, and the military shot it down. There's actually footage of it, that was played everywhere, of it being blown up. And because it landed in the ocean, nobody was harmed, and we're able to recover the wreckage and the debris, right? And we're going to take it back to an FBI laboratory in Virginia, and then the United States is going to investigate. It's going to analyze it. We're going to try to find out exactly what China was looking at and any sort of advanced or proprietary technology that they used to do it. Now, according to experts, we're pretty sure that there's nothing special about this balloon, but you never know, especially with China, rapidly becoming a near peer. So we want to make sure we have all the information we can get. Now, how did China react to all this? Well, according to their Ministry of Foreign Affairs, they said the decision to shoot down this balloon, which, by the way, of course, they would say this. They're like, look, it's not a spy balloon. It's a civilian research balloon that just it drifted off its flight path. We didn't mean for it to go to the United States, and it's basically being used for meteorological purposes. It's a weather balloon. The Pentagon knows better. They're like, whatever. Okay. So after the balloon was shot down, the China Ministry of Foreign Affairs said, look, this was an obvious overreaction by the United States and a serious violation of international practices, and we reserve the right to take further actions in response. And then China's defense ministry basically backed up their foreign affairs ministry, and they're like, look, we reserve the right to take necessary measures to deal with similar situations. Similar situations because, of course, we spy on China too, right? And this is a big one. I think the American public, because of this, many people, and Republicans are desperately trying to make sure that this is the impression. This idea that what we're experiencing here was a first-time scenario. That's just not true. Countries spy on each other. Allies spy on allies. people spy on enemies, enemies spy on people. So China and the United States have been spying on each other for decades using satellites, right? So, typically not balloons for various reasons, but we conduct surveillance on one another all the time, okay? Now, that's the story as we know it so far. How have people reacted? Well, we heard how China reacted. How are Democrats and Republicans reacting? Let's first start with Democrats, okay? So we've got Adam Smith in the House of Representatives Armed Services Committee, a committee that's very relevant to this type of story. And he said to Fox News, he goes, look, I think that China's embarrassed by this. They should be. A balloon, as far as we know, is not particularly effective spying tool since we're familiar with the technology. Again, unless the analysis that's being done in the Virginia FBI laboratory reveals something unexpected, which is possible, but not likely. We're pretty familiar with the technology. And the balloon's probably not going to capture anything that advanced satellites wouldn't be able to do already. And he points out something's pretty funny. He's like, look, it's never really a positive thing to have your spying efforts exposed to not only the person you're spying on, but the globe. So it's not a positive for China in any way, shape, or form, which is true. I mean, I'm not a CIA agent. Of course, if I were, I guess that's exactly what I would say. But I feel like the best kind of espionage is the one that, isn't publicly exposed to the rest of the planet, right? Like the most effective type of espionage is the kind you don't know about, not the kind that everybody knows about, and then you see the particular tool you're using for espionage get blown up on live TV. Just a thought. So that's how Democrats are handling it. One other thing I want to point out before we get to the real meat of the story, which is how Republicans are looking at this, is also to provide some context of the time frame. So the timing couldn't be worse for a story like this because it wasn't just a random freaking week in February. This was the week that our Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, our top diplomat, was going to go to China, to Beijing, to meet with his counterpart in the Chinese government. So the top U.S. diplomat and the top Chinese diplomat were going to meet for the first time in like 6 years to try to normalize or get some sort of progress in terms of the relationship between the United States and China, which is pretty tenuous at this point. So because the story broke, Secretary of State Antony Blinken postponed the trip. As far as I know, it's not canceled, it's postponed. But that's still not good, right? So he confirmed Friday that he postponed a planned trip to China after the surveillance balloon was discovered. It would have been the first visit by a top U.S. diplomat in 6 years. So none of this happened. A top diplomat visiting China didn't occur under the Trump administration. It was the last time was under the Obama administration. And again, the relationship between the United States and China has deteriorated in many, many respects. And that's not good since China is, again, not only our major economic partner, like we're very much reliant on one another for, international trade and commerce, but China is approaching near peer status. They are becoming militarily and economically more powerful by the day. And so they will eventually, according to most experts, be a superpower, and not like a century from now, like in a matter of years or decades. And we could potentially be looking at another Cold War. So the last thing we want is, tensions to be higher than what they need to. So it sucks that this happened, and Secretary of State Blinken had to postpone his trip because of China's, surveillance efforts. So Blinken, our Secretary of State, told China's top foreign affairs minister that the surveillance balloon was a clear violation of U.S. sovereignty and international law. It was an irresponsible act. It was detrimental to the substantive discussions that the United States and China were prepared to have. So again, a potential setback. Hopefully not, but a potential setback. And again, just for note purposes, it's really important to remember that according to every reporting, the United States and China have used for decades surveillance tools. We've spied on each other for decades, particularly satellites, to keep an eye on each other, okay? Now let's get to the Republicans, because this is a big one. Of course, this happened on President Biden's watch. President Biden's a Democrat. Republicans are Republicans. So they saw a good opportunity to pounce. Like, oh my God, our near-peer foreign adversary spying on us. This is happening on the watch of a Democrat. Let's make some hay about this. So they did. Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, Republican, said, first, Biden refused to defend our borders. Now he won't defend our skies. Then Marjorie Taylor Greene added on, I just spoke with our great America First President Trump. He would have never allowed China to fly a spy balloon over our country and our military bases and assets. President Trump would have shot it down before it entered the U.S. Make note of that. We'll come back to it. Also make note of this last sentence. And so would I. President Trump would have shot it down before it entered the U.S. And so would I. Now, it's not surprising, given that she's a gun nut, that she would gladly shoot a thing down and potentially risk major civilian casualties and civilian property damage. But this sentence is really interesting to me because according to reporting in the past, maybe a few weeks, but certainly the past few days, the rumor is that Marjorie Taylor Greene is angling to be Donald Trump's running mate for vice president in 2024. Now, it hasn't been confirmed, but this statement to me is really interesting because she is not on the House Armed Services Committee, of which I'm, as far as I know, and she's a relatively minor in terms of seniority. She's relatively freshman, representative, not even a senator. She's one of 435 members of the House of Representatives. Why do we care what you would do if you were president? Donald Trump isn't even president. It seems like she's signaling to her base, like, hey, this is what I would do if I was in a position of top executive, power. So to me, that's confirmation that she's also angling to be President Trump's running mate. So now let's go to Jim Jordan, another Republican who's basically, the distaff counterpart of Marjorie Taylor Greene. He's the male crazy embodiment of the GOP. Would Trump have let China fly a spy balloon over our country? Would Reagan, JFK, Truman? No, 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 and no. So why is Biden letting China off the hook? Well, would it surprise you that according to the Pentagon, China did fly spy balloons over the United States when Donald Trump was in office? U.S. officials said Saturday that similar Chinese balloons transited the continental United States briefly at least three times during the Trump administration. According to the DoD statement directly, instances of this kind of balloon activity have been observed previously over the past several years. So it did happen on Trump's watch repeatedly, and I didn't know about it. I don't think you knew anything about it. So not only did it happen 3 times when Donald Trump was president, Donald Trump didn't do anybody the courtesy of announcing it to the public. So that's interesting. Now, of course, Republicans, pun intended, shot themselves in the foot. Now they have to scramble to, spin this because they seized on this. Oh my God, Donald Trump, Republicans would have never allowed this. Biden let it happen. What the hell? Now it turns out Biden shot the thing down. He did it safely, and it's being recovered so we can examine it. So he did do something about it. He's rebuked the Chinese government. So he's said something about it publicly. Actions, words. And now we find out the third damning fact that it happened repeatedly under the Trump administration. As far as we know, none of them were shot down. So how are Republicans going to spin it? Let's take a look. Let's start with Senator Marco Rubio of Florida talking with Jake Tapper about it. What's Senator Rubio got to say?
So you think that, first of all, I guess there are 2 parts to a question I have following up on that. One is, the Pentagon says that they know of the Chinese doing this at least 4 other times previously, once at the beginning of the Biden administration, 3 times during the Trump administration. It seems to be you're saying no, that's not true. But in any case,
No, I
what's
know
the
what
difference?
I'm saying. Okay, well, the difference is this. Are we aware? Have we seen the Chinese fly these balloons in the past? Yes. I think there's even Twitter pictures of it flying at one point off the coast of the U.S. Down south somewhere. The existence of the balloons is not a mystery to people in that field. What we've never seen, what is unprecedented, and whoever the source was at the Department of Defense would have to acknowledge this, what is unprecedented is a balloon flight that entered over Idaho and flew over Montana, over all these sensitive military installations, Air Force bases, ICBM fields, right across the middle of the country. That has never happened before. That is unprecedented. That it flew briefly over some part of the U.S. or continental U.S., that's one thing. But what we saw this week, it's unprecedented. And that's why everyone's reacting the way they're reacting. We've never seen this. So this is no comparison to anything that may have happened up to this point.
So he's saying, okay, look, yeah, it's happened before. It's happened, but has it ever happened over Montana or Idaho? And for this long? And maybe not. Maybe none of the 3 places or the 3 instances in which the Trump administration had this occur. Maybe it wasn't over Montana or Idaho. Maybe it was over other states because there are 48 other states, and many of them have military bases, installations, and missile fields. Maybe it happened over. Wait, we don't know. We don't know. Now, the Pentagon did confirm it didn't happen for this length of time, which fair enough. But that wasn't the distinction that Republicans were complaining about. They weren't offering a nuanced take like, look, this happened before, this is a thing that happens, but it's the length of time we're really upset about. No. They made the error of overstating repeatedly that this would have nothing like this would have ever happened under the Trump administration. No spy balloons would have ever been over the United States if Donald Trump were still in power. But there were. And so Marco Rubio's trying to split hairs like a good little Trump sycophant and saying, well, look, that's not why we're upset. Okay, obvious spinning. Let's move on to Mike Turner, Representative Mike Turner. So we had a senator, now we have a Republican congressman. What does he have to say on Meet the Press?
It can tell you.
We also briefed on that there was apparently 2 or 3 incidents in the previous administration as well.
Well, that's what they're saying now. But I think that the administration needs to come forward, because this is not an ability to say that this is a crisis that was handed to them. This is a crisis that has developed as a result of this president during his administration, allowing China to do a similar act before, not responding, and then clearly in this one not seeing the urgency of what was unfolding. I mean, the president allowed this to go across our most sensitive sites and wasn't even going to tell the American public. If you hadn't broken this story, the American public would not have even known. There was no attempt to notify Congress, no attempt to put together the Gang of Eight. I think this administration lacks urgency.
The Pentagon...
So there again, Chuck Todd rightly points out, like, hey, this happened 3 times under the Trump administration, and again, he just instantly pivots. Well, I mean, this thing isn't a situation they inherited. This is something that happened under Biden. Again, feel free to criticize President Biden if you think that he handled it irresponsibly, right? But to me, the frustration is dishonestly pretending like nothing like this has ever happened under the Trump administration or would have been handled radically different under the Trump administration is just patently absurd. I want to play one other clip from Pete Buttigieg and then round it off with a final thing that Republicans are apparently intending to do or potentially intending to do. So let's go to Democrat Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg, also speaking with Jake Tapper. What does Mayor Pete have to say about this?
Entered U.S. airspace 8 days ago, 2 Saturdays ago in Alaska. Once it became clear that this was not an accident, why did the U.S. not shoot it down then?
Well, again, the president gave instructions to have it handled, to have it shot down in a way that was safe. As you may have seen, there's reporting now that the debris field that was created by this balloon when it was shot down was about 7 miles long. And so anytime the military is considering an operation like that, they have to consider the safety of the American people. The president called for this to be dealt with in a way that balanced all of the different risks. That's exactly what happened. Military did a terrific job. From our perspective, in the DOT, of course, our main concern is the safety of the national airspace. This thing was above where flight operations happen, and so any debris would have passed through that national airspace. But the FAA works very closely with the Pentagon. In this case, had to do ground stops on those airports on the eastern seaboard, close off some of the airspace to make sure that everything was safe and secure during the operation. And as you know, the operation took place without any damage or injury to any American lives or property.
Obviously.
So there you go. That's Pete Buttigieg, Secretary of Transportation. So he certainly has the consideration with respect to American airspace. And he was also a veteran, right? So he has military experience as well. As he says, a debris field 7 miles long. It's a lot of debris. And that's a lot of potential lives and civilian property that could have been at risk if we shot it over the continental United States. As he said, President Biden gave the order, but it balanced all the risks. The risk of allowing the balloon to continue operating, the risk to American lives, American property. And the military executed this operation pretty flawlessly, and there wasn't any damage to anyone's life or property. It's good. So we're going to conclude with this. How are Republicans reacting in terms of, we've heard what they've said, but what are they going to do congressionally, legislatively, politically? Well, the House GOP eyes China spy balloon investigations. House Republicans are indicating plans to investigate the Biden administration's response to a Chinese surveillance balloon that was shot down off the coast of South Carolina on Saturday. It fits into a broader array of planned probes by the House GOP majority into the Biden administration's military and foreign policy, including the withdrawal from Afghanistan. I will be demanding answers and will hold the administration accountable for this embarrassing display of weakness, referring to, us shooting down a Chinese spy balloon and pissing off the country that owned that particular spy balloon. That's weakness, apparently. Said Representative Michael McCall, the chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee. I think we're first looking into an in-depth briefing. Additional steps have yet to be determined. Mike Lawler, a freshman member of the panel, said that President Biden, Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, and Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin must cooperate with Congress and provide immediate answers. So yeah, that's where we are with it, folks. Again, the balloon was tracked, was shot down safely and successfully. We've recovered the debris. We're looking into, the technology and what it was surveilling. We have rebuked China. This was handled safely, responsibly, and Republicans are looking to weaponize this. Right? First, Trump would have never let that happen. Then when we found out Trump did let it happen, that's like, okay, well, he would have never let it happen over Idaho or Montana. And now another investigation. So into the border, into Afghanistan, into Hunter Biden's laptop, probably into Joe Biden's laundry at some point, classified documents. And now this, okay? This is further proof, yet again, of a bad faith Republican Party that's not eager or interested in helping responsibly govern. They're looking to weaponize, to attack in bad faith, even before all the facts are ascertained. They've got egg on their face now that the Pentagon said, hey, guys, actually, no, this happened a couple of times under Donald Trump. So, but there you go. America's big balloon story. Now, hopefully, we can relegate balloons back to birthday parties and, again, gender reveal parties and, horror movies, things like that. But if additional facts become available, we will definitely be talking about it. Hey you! Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, and I hope that you did, please hit the like and subscribe buttons below. And if you absolutely hated the video, the best revenge for you is also to hit the like and subscribe buttons below. That'll teach me. If you want to share an opinion or share some feedback, go ahead and leave a comment, all right? 2023 is a year of change, hence the aggressive rebrand and commitment to new content. Inspired by my friends Luke Beasley and STV Philly, my personal goal for this channel is to hit 40,000 subscribers by the end of the year. So I'm hoping you'll do me a solid by spreading the word and the videos to potential fans and hate watchers alike. And in the meantime, we'll be pondering politics again with you very soon.